Welcome back to the Combo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
And Fiorella.
And Johnny Sue is still spinning in the ones and twos. Fam,
you're so extra.
I know I'm extra because today I woke up at the crack of noon and Twitter was going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw one thing spin out to another thing and to another thing and to another thing. And we were already on the heels of three beautiful bills that were introduced about Assange, about Snowden, whatnot. A week removed from the whole ballot harvesting.
But wait, who cares about that? Project Veritas.
Exactly. Project Veritas.
Screw our freedom. Screw the press. Screw Julian Assange. No. All I care about is how Ilhan Omar was attacked by Congresswoman
Racistly.
Gabbard. It's just awful.
Racist.
Even though she didn't say her name.
Nope.
Oh.
Yep.
Forget Assange. No.
Nope.
This doesn't matter.
All this at the crack of noon today, seeing everybody go crazy.
Yep.
But the thing is great is that we already had a scheduled interview today with some experts in the field of Julian Assange. There has been a group, fam, like we have been talking about election integrity, but there's been a group out there that talks Assange. And Assange might not be the sexiest topic to gain a lot of YouTube followers or a lot of Patreons, whatnot, but it's one of the most important nuanced topics, is it not?
Yeah, and they have been at this since before most people have in general, even the people covering it now. I mean, Action for Assange, you guys have been there at every turn for a very long time, doing the vigils before anybody was paying any attention. So we got to give credit where credit's due. You guys are a wealth of knowledge on this topic. So we are very happy to have you here to talk about one of the most, if not the most important trials of our time, at the very least, regarding press freedoms, regarding whistleblower protections, regarding anything regarding the rule of law, which is it sets the precedent for pretty much everything we want to get. So welcome, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Let's give it up for Action Assange. Come on, everybody.
Woo!
Oh, the Dolphins in play. Comrade Misty's here.
Yes.
Steve Poikinen, Andrew, the fam of fams. We're in the house. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Thanks for having us.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
What about you, Andrew? How you doing, buddy?
Oh, pretty good. It's been fun keeping up with everything and then trying to figure out what the next moves are going forward.
Yeah.
Well, what is the next move? You guys just came back from D.C., right? You were there for a little while. You guys rocked it. A lot of protests, saw a lot of people. I believe one of your colleagues, Taylor, was in London. Where are we at right now? Where do we stand today on Julian Assange?
So at the moment, we're sort of in a holding pattern. The rendition hearing adjourned Thursday of last week, and November 16th, they will submit closing arguments. It's kind of a shame because the closing arguments are only going to be submitted in written form. There won't be any verbal presentation. There won't be the opportunity for us to see and hear what's going on. And then January 4th, District Judge Vanessa Baratzer, the concierge of the U.S. State Department, will read her decision. So we've gotten just shy of 90 days between now and when she reads the decision to ratchet up as much public pressure from every corner of politics and the internet and everything in between to let Baratzer know, to let the UK government know, to let our government know that that Julian Assange should not be broad daylight kidnapped and brought over here to face a kangaroo court and then get sentenced to 175 years in a supermax prison for telling the truth.
Precisely. Did you want to say anything else, Andrew, Misty?
But one of the things that we're looking forward to.
Go ahead, Andrew.
One of the things that we're looking forward to is going back to DC for that January 4th, like right after the New Year decision by Vanessa Baratzer. But the big thing we want to encourage everybody to do, and this goes for whatever topic you're interested in or your sphere of activism is, just be the voice in your local community. There's big events that happen all the time, but the most important thing is that the people in your city know what is true, what you stand for. And make as much noise as you can, whether it's at city council meetings or with posters and flyers and banners, just putting them up and passing them out by yourself.
Can we talk about a couple of highlights that have happened in the last few weeks, because we haven't had you guys on for a couple weeks. So there was talk about Julian Assange's health. Can we talk a little bit more about what happened during the trial when that was brought up?
That was brutal. I think that was probably the most brutal. It was like 3 days of medical testimony, I think. Was it 3 or 4? 3, 4? I don't know. They kind of rolled together.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of really difficult testimony to kind of read through, talking about his mental condition and the, circumstances he finds himself in, and how that is going to worsen if he is in fact extradited. So I think anybody with any compassion or humanity whatsoever who reads through that testimony would be deeply impacted by what they were seeing and hearing.
It very nearly broke me trying to cover it. It's something that, like, look, the whole point of WikiLeaks, the whole point of cypherpunks for that matter, is privacy for the powerless and transparency for the powerful. And that doesn't mean that you and I are powerless or weak. It means we don't have agency. We don't have political agency. We don't have monetary agency. So that's where that's coming from. And to have someone who is a very private person like Julian Assange, to have his most intimate health, physical and mental, just laid bare in a courtroom, it impacted me severely. Like I broke down a couple of times on the way to work after covering it for 4 hours, just because it was that heavy. It was. The United States has something called special administrative measures, and we've talked about this a number of times on the vigils, talked about it a few times on my show. Special administrative measures are sanctioned torture. The regular isolation that a prisoner in solitary confinement gets pales in comparison to someone under special administrative measures. A gag order is placed on their legal team. A gag order is placed on their family. Anyone who's allowed to come in. If they comment on special administrative measures, they're subject to prosecution. If during a lawyer-client meeting, a literal FBI agent is present in the room for that, there is absolutely zero lawyer-client confidentiality, which is becoming one of the hallmarks of this case, by the way. Mm-hmm. And that is something that we did find out on the very last week. Some of the testimony about UC Global was introduced into the hearing. UC Global, the Spanish security firm that protected the Ecuadorian embassy, that was at the same time contracted by the Ecuadorian government, also contracted by the United States, by the CIA, by the State Department, through Trump mega donor Sheldon Adelson, in order to spy on Julian Assange's specifically lawyer meetings. But everyone that came into the embassy to visit Julian Assange was subjected to surveillance. There were people who were followed. In and of itself is enough to throw the case completely out.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's going to happen remains to be seen. But Daniel Ellsberg has made the point multiple times now, like, this is basically what happened to me. Mm-hmm. They broke into my shrink's office. Nixon sent the plumbers after it, and it got dismissed. The mistrial was declared because of this violation of my privacy, of the relationship that I'm supposed to have with my psychiatrist. Yeah. And so we basically have a repeat of it, except for instead of Nixon and his goons, it's Trump and Sheldon Adelson and their goons.
Andrew?
So one of the most disturbing things, I guess, out of the entire court case, and specifically the segment about Julian's medical situation and the effects of solitary confinement, is the exposure for the heinousness of the U.S. prison system, to where Julian's case highlights the horrific detention practices in the MCC, in ADX Florence, in the Eastern District of Virginia, and all these different prisons, where they're specifically designed to have almost no human contact whatsoever. The guards are vigorously trained to not respond or interact in any way with the inmates. The inmates, if they want to communicate, have to shout across a cell block because they hold 7 people inside of a supermax size facility. So it's looking at Julian's situation for me and putting it in context of like, this is our empire on trial. This is our domestic torture programs being exposed. This is the international CIA renditions being exposed, the war crimes, the corruption between all of the banks and the banking cartels. And it's crazy that there's such a low level of coverage for not only what is being prosecuted, like the exposing of the leaks and the basic journalist communication, but also the exposing of the empire and like the torture programs that were out there. So that's to me, the biggest take home.
Right. It speaks to the volumes of how the U.S. government and the West generally get completely, that these warmongers get away with accolades after enacting these war crimes. Meanwhile, Julian Assange is in a kangaroo court, and nobody's talking about what he exposed were U.S. war crimes on millions of innocent people, a lot of them brown people in the Middle East, and it's also a crime journalistically, but it's also a complete disregard to these people living in these war-torn countries that are war-torn primarily because of our U.S. interventionism in our foreign policy. Can we talk a little bit more about this CIA plan to poison Julian Assange?
Yeah, this came out in the last day of witnesses, which I believe was Wednesday, when the statements were read from 2 UC Global employees. UC Global is a private intelligence corporation in Spain. Like as Steve said, was employed by Sheldon Adelson, who's Trump's biggest donor, to work on behalf of the CIA to wiretap and spy on Julian. While he was in there, David Morales, the owner of UC Global, was working with his American friends to develop a plan to poison Julian. And it didn't get into like hyper specific detail, but it's basically the same thing that you saw from the Nixon administration about how they were trying to handle the leaks. That like, if we can't get this guy to shut up, if we can't stop his legal defense, we'll just go after him and kill him.
Wow. Misty, do you have a comment on that?
I just think it's interesting that's, I mean, I know we kind of mentioned how there's a lack of coverage. Mm-hmm. This is super juicy. I mean, this is CIA spy games and assassination plots. And I mean, it's got all of the things that you would think that a journalistic outlet or a media outlet would be interested in. This could be like super click happy. People love this shit. Mm-hmm. But nobody's covering it. Nobody's covering it. It's and I think that's, I mean, we've discussed it many times on the vigil. It's very much to do with the, decade-long smear campaign against Julian Assange. They've been manufacturing consent for what they're doing to him for a very long time. And obviously mainstream media is not going to cover that because, I mean, WikiLeaks exposed them too. So they're no fans of Julian Assange, but, it is kind of disheartening, disappointing, frustrating, infuriating that we can't even get independent media to cover it. I mean, aside from you guys who have done fantastic coverage, you've been a consistent voice. And there's a couple other ones, there's the Jimmy Dores and there's Richard Medhurst and, there's some people, I don't want to forget anybody.
Yeah.
Because you'll get yelled at for 3 days.
But I actually have the witness statement pulled up here about the mentioning of the poisoning plot.
Yeah.
You want me to read through it real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I recall that this is witness 2 speaking, and I'll put the links to this in chat to where people can actually get these 2 witness statements. But the witness said that I recall that on one occasion in Jazir de la Fanta, at the UC Global headquarters on December 2017, David Morales said the Americans were desperate and that they even suggested on more than one or even suggested more extreme measures that should be employed against the guest at the Ecuadorian embassy to put an end to the situation of Assange's predominance in the embassy. Specifically, the suggestions that the doors of the embassy could be left open, which would allow for the argument that this had been an accidental mistake, which would allow for a person to enter from the outside of the embassy and kidnap the asylee. Even the possibility of poisoning Mr. Assange was discussed. All of these suggestions, Morales said, were under consideration during his dealings with his contacts in the United States. Obviously, we employees were shocked that these suggestions and comments and commented amongst ourselves that, of course, that Morales had embarked on what was beginning to become extremely dangerous. So they were trying to find a way to kidnap Julian by trying to get people to leave the doors open.
Right. And it was done in this legal jargon. It was framed in this way to make it seem like it wasn't what it was. Like, this is what they do. They gaslight, and they continuously attack through their gaslighting. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about.
Wait, real quick, if I can you imagine what MSNBC, CNN, NBC News, every blue check liberal prostitute on the planet would do if it came out that that China was plotting to kill an award-winning journalist who had exposed the crimes that their government committed?
Right.
Yeah.
There would be an international outcry from every single Western country. There would be like
There'd be war.
the virtual equivalent of, a free Mandela event or a Live Aid or something like that. There would be commercials on every fucking Netflix channel. And here we are with 99% of the media not just sleeping on this, but running away from it as fast as they can. Yeah. And this does include an unfortunate, overwhelming majority of independent media.
Yeah. Well, before Fee gets to the next question, I just want to ask and piggyback on what you guys were saying here. Fiorella was talking about the silence from a lot of that liberal, independent media, whatever it is, on actually what Julian exposed. But are you guys, and I want to hear from Misty first on this one, are you guys even at all surprised at the fact that they're avoiding, and I'm not just talking about the mainstream media, I'm talking about that social media left, those progressives that are ignoring the treatment he's getting right now. I mean, does it at all surprise you that they're missing this right now with the juiciness of the possible poisoning and the way they're handling this trial? What's your opinion about the progressives and the way they're silent right now?
I mean, I wish I could say I was surprised, but I'm not. This is kind of par for the course. This is kind of what they do. I'll say that I was disappointed in a few content creators that I thought were cooler than that. But the overwhelming majority of independent media has been pretty disappointing for a long time. I think that a lot of what happens is that, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but they're worried about getting clicks and subscriptions and Patreons and all of that stuff. And so they know that they have to appeal to the broadest group of people. Yeah. And so anything that's, even slightly controversial or, a little sticky to talk about, they avoid it because they don't want to lose their, their base. They don't want to lose their subscriptions or, their Twitter followers or whatever. And it's really unfortunate. But yeah, I wish I could say I was surprised. I am surprised about just general people on the left, like on Twitter. The silence is deafening. I mean, people who I, otherwise look up to and think are, really intelligent, right-minded leftist people are completely dead silent. And it's, that I think is more depressing to me than, kind of the expected, silence from progressive politicians. But yeah, independent media has been kind of an issue that has been frustrating to me for a long time. So that wasn't really all that surprising.
Go ahead.
I was going to say to that question, because we had some fun interactions with Paula Jean Swearengin, and I'm sure Missy will love to talk about this.
What happened with Paula Jean?
So it was probably the politest we've ever been as a community interacting with somebody. And we asked her, like, hey, please put a statement out about Julian. And she parrots Bernie Sanders' line of, we need to support press freedom and journalists shouldn't be prosecuted by the Espionage Act, and all of these things, not saying Julian's name and talking about his situation. And it escalated to the point that Paula Jean called me personally and called Misty personally to discuss the situation. And when we asked her again, like, hey, this is a great statement, with all due respect, could you include Julian's name? Like, could you talk about him? Why aren't you saying his name? And it turned into her saying, like, you're attacking me. Why are you asking me? I'm an ally. Go attack my opponent. And so it was just this really weird situation where, like,
it was one of the most bizarre experiences I've ever, one of two, because I've had two very recently bizarre experiences with politicians. But
yes, you have.
Yes, I have. But that's a very abbreviated version of what happened. It initially started because I have been quite frantically tweeting at people, trying to get people's attention, to get them to talk about it. And what kicked it off at first was that she or a staffer, I don't know which, was hiding replies that had to do with Assange on her tweets. And somebody sent a screenshot to me and I was like, what the hell? So I tweeted at her, I tweeted about it. And then that's what led to the kind of, blanket, vague nonsense statement. And then, like Andrew said, we talked to her on the phone. She was very cool on the phone. She seemed very receptive and open to what we were talking about. She said she wanted to educate herself a little bit more before she spoke publicly. And I'm like, that's great. If you need resources, let me know. We'll hook you up. And she was very cool. Yeah. And then a couple hours later, she showed up on a completely different thread. It wasn't my thread. It was somebody else's we were just kind of discussing her as a candidate. And, she doesn't really have foreign policy on her website. And I wonder what her position is on that. And she showed up in this thread and, just went why are you guys tearing me apart? And why are you attacking me? And just like all this gaslighting stuff. And just my personal opinion, it seemed to me like she came back looking for a reason to be offended and to block me and to block the people who were commenting on it.
She blocked the entire freaking thread. And now she got it talking to.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you go right now and tweet at her and ask her about Assange, I will almost guarantee you'll get blocked. She's blocking anybody now who even asks her to comment on it.
For context to the audience, Paula Jean Swearingen was she ran for Senate back in 2016 and she ran again as well, but her prominence came as a result of Bernie Sanders. She classified herself as like a Sanders type of candidate, Sanders type of Democrat. West Virginia in 2016 went to Bernie Sanders in the primary, and as soon as he dropped out, it went to Donald Trump in the general. It was one of those states where it was like people were so fed up with the Democratic establishment that's where it went to. So she's supposedly a progressive. I mean, she's a coal miner's daughter. I mean, she's fought really hard in that area, and she seemed like a great candidate. So just for context, this is who we're talking about, who, had this reaction.
And by the way, if you can't say his name, Julian Assange. Say his name, Julian Assange. If you can't say his name, either one, you're ignorant and you don't know and you don't deserve a place in our Congress, or two, you're listening to the establishment that tells you to keep your mouth silent about it.
Let me tell you something,
one or the other.
In that thread, she said, I support 100%. That was the sentence. She didn't say who she supported. She didn't say what she supported. She said, I support 100%. Like the obvious, I'm not allowed to say this name in that sentence. At that point, I was like, well, fuck it. I'm not even.
And she's the current Democratic nominee for senator in West Virginia. Race. She beat out
Ojeda.
Yeah, and I love Richard Ojeda. I think he's a man that literally got almost clubbed to death for running in the primaries in the first place in 2018, if you remember that whole situation. He literally got beat outside of his car getting someone a bumper sticker. Yeah. And then kept running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Andrew's right. We were so nice to her. Like I mean,
No, I saw it. You were extremely respectful.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not always. I'll admit to that. I'm kind of a jerk sometimes, and it's because I'm out of patience. But you know, I was very nice to her. You know, we all were. We were all, and we were trying to like figure out like what is wrong. We don't understand what your problem is. We're just having a conversation about you as a candidate. That's kind of what you sign up for when you run. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to be in politics, you have to be willing to be evaluated and, you know, discussed. It's kind of
Instead, it was my opponent wouldn't even deign to speak to you, and like, look at me,
over and over again.
Like, I'm climbing down to get in the mud with the real people, and you should praise me for that.
Yes, like, she even said, you should be grateful I'm talking to you because my opponent would never give you the time of day. Yep. And I'm like, we should be grateful that you're addressing a critical issue when you're running for Senate. Like, I'm sorry, you
and she's one to talk. She's one to talk. She attacked Richard Ojeda on the Kavanaugh thing because he wouldn't come out and say he was completely against Kavanaugh and said he was for due process and all this other stuff. And she attacked him in public over that issue for saying you need to make a stance against him. So she's playing the same tactics right now when you're saying, hey, man, can you mention Julian's name? And she's like, how dare you? Well, you just did the same thing to Richard Ojeda years ago when you were trying to say that he needs to come out and verbally make a stance against that. So, I mean, I've always been like one eye on Paula Jean because she seems to be weak on foreign policy, weak on civil liberties. You know, she's one of those typical neo-progressives Bernie Sanders like, well, a Green New Deal, we got to eliminate coal, Medicare for all. I get it. But what about these other nuanced issues? And right here, this is the line. This is the shit line for me. If you ain't for Julian, bye-bye, peace. So...
Exactly. Guys, really quickly, along those lines, I just want to get you guys' commentary on regarding, because this ties in directly to the silence on Julian Assange by our most prominent and upheld politicians, these politicians that people just regard with such respect, that people put on a pedestal, politicians like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, the Squad, Bernie Sanders, all these politicians. Their silence on Assange has been really obvious, but recently, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard released 3 very important pieces of legislation, not only directly asking for the dropping of all charges on Edward Snowden, all charges on Julian Assange, but also reining in the Espionage Act with protections for whistleblowers, which, by the way, my only criticism of that is that I would want to get rid of the entire thing. That is my one criticism of that. But she is the only Democrat to really be pushing anything on Julian Assange, and she's had to work with Republicans for it. What is your opinion on that, on her being the only Democrat?
So in order to be elected as a Democrat and be rewarded by the establishment, you have to swear on a stack of $9 a pint ice creams that that you are going to pretend that the national security state doesn't exist. And that is exactly what happens. As a result of that, you get all of these people who love these politicians. And Fee, you were talking about this a little bit yesterday. I've for a very long time thought that in an increasingly secular society, the same energy that people put into religion has been transferred into political identity. And so in a vacuum or in an absence of gods and goddesses, we have now made spiritual figureheads and leaders out of these politicians.
Yep.
It's sick. It pisses me off to no end. These are incredibly fallible human beings who wouldn't be where they were if they didn't sacrifice a giant chunk of everything that used to matter to them. So when you, it's just flat out disgusting that there is no support whatever from the rest of the entire Democratic Party, particularly these quote unquote progressives, because it should be a fucking layup for them.
It should. This should be easy peasy. This is it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a sad state of affairs when the left is behind. Well, I don't want to say the right because there's only certain members of the right that are really speaking up, but at least there's a few coming out of the right compared to the left where there is nobody. Only the banished Democrat is the one speaking up for our civil liberties and our freedom of speech and our freedom of press. So,
right.
Yeah.
And the thing to remember too, that it was the Democratic Party that actually called on Mike Pompeo to get Julian taken out of the embassy.
Right.
In particular, it was Chuck Schumer, Robert Mendez, Richard Durbin, Elliot Engel, Dianne Feinstein, and Jerry Nadler, who specifically wrote a letter to the Trump administration asking Secretary Pompeo to meet with the president of Ecuador about removing Julian's political asylum and getting him out of the embassy. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that the Democratic line is so authoritarian and neoconservative, because they're ultimately a party that started 7 additional conflicts in the Middle East and brought slavery back to Libya.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're a peace-loving, hey, let's stop the war machine party. That's just this artificial facade that gets put on the mask of the beast, essentially.
But Trump.
But what about progressives, Misty? What about AOC? I mean, she's over here defending Ilhan Omar, where instead of talking about Julian Assange, nobody's trying to vilify Ilhan Omar on the left. I mean, that's not the point here. What do you think about AOC's silence? I mean, she is supposed to be the great next Bernie Sanders. She's supposed to be that, but I'm starting to think she is the next Barack Obama, in my opinion.
AOC was never there to wrestle away power from Nancy Pelosi. She was there to inherit that power. And that's exactly what she was doing. And what she is doing. And she's doing it by being a neoliberal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the people that bought in to what she was selling in 2018. But it's time to wander over into reality and realize that this is a low rent fucking actress who doesn't give a goddamn about you.
Go ahead,
well,
Misty.
and I think that's my biggest problem with the progressives is that, I'm not a Tulsi supporter. I never have been. I don't believe in electoral politics anyway, so I don't support politicians. I have my issues with her. I have things that I love about her. But it's very telling when AOC can't be bothered to even mention Tulsi Gabbard. She's ignored the OFF Act. She's ignored the Securing America's Elections Act. All of the stuff that Tulsi's been doing that AOC proclaims to care about, she ignores until there's a way for her to, on one hand, take a dig at Tulsi Gabbard, and on the other hand, distract from the fact that she can't be bothered to speak out on the greatest court case on press freedom, maybe in history. So I think that's very telling. I'm not surprised by it. I think that a lot of us who have been kind of paying attention to her have seen this coming for a very long time. I mean, the minute she was elected, she started walking back all of her positions and, took DSA off of her bio on Twitter and stopped talking about, just so much stuff. But the fact that they're turning this Ilhan Omar thing into like this Mean Girls high school drama crap, while completely ignoring the decimation of free speech and free press is beyond absurd. It's beyond absurd. And the fact that people are still holding them up as like these progressive champions, these people are not your friends. They're not your friends. They consistently capitulate to power. They cannot stop sucking up to Nancy Pelosi. They can't be bothered to speak on important issues. They're all sparkle and no substance. All they do is tweet. If you want a snarky tweet or a dramatic speech, AOC is your girl. If you want anything done, you need to look elsewhere because she's not the person. I mean, her key legislation she stole from the Green Party, watered down and made it corporate friendly. And, that's what she's known for. So these people are not your friends. I'm sorry if you like AOC and that hurts your feelings, but that's the truth. And we need people to recognize that.
Well, I'm going to defer to the caucus leadership here with Andrew for a second. And Andrew, when you read that list along, you said Richard Durbin. Let's not slip. It's Dick Durbin because he is a dick. But I'm going to do this super chat right here, and I want you to listen to this here because this information came out with the Director of National Intelligence, with Ratcliffe releasing a lot of this information where he declassified this information that pretty much Russiagate was made up by Hillary Clinton and the campaign and Robbie Mook and the rest of the mooks. But this says, so the CIA was complicit with Hillary Clinton info on Russiagate. They knew. They let him put it out there. They didn't care. People need to go to jail as far as I'm concerned. And the CIA plotted to assassinate Assange. Care to put two and two together? R.I.P. R.I.P. Seth Rich. Your opinions on what was just declassified and how all the connections fit into each other when it comes to the plotting of Assange, the CIA, and all the people they have embarrassed.
Well, I don't think it really comes as any surprise, per se. Like, people that have actually been following your show and Jimmy's show and the Gray Zone have known the whole time what was actually behind the Russiagate narrative and all of the bullshit there. But I think the larger impact is amongst the general public. Like the people that aren't in the like woke progressive media sphere, because they're the ones like the MSNBC viewers that have to swallow the pill of like, this didn't actually happen and we were lied to. And I feel like it's going to shut more people out of the political process than it will inspire people to try to stop the CIA and different agencies from doing this again. Because ultimately they can, if they did it with the Trump-Russia story, what else can they do it with and what else have they already done it with?
Yeah.
As far as manufacturing massive hosts.
Great point. Great point,
Exactly.
Andrew. You got anything else?
Did you guys want to comment on that a little bit further?
Steve?
So it pisses me off to no end, because this information has been publicly available for quite a while. There's been excellent reporting on it. And I realize that some was just declassified, but over the summer we had the leaked transcripts from the Flynn investigation, or when Flynn was prosecuted. We had Sean Henry, the CEO of CrowdStrike, the people who looked at the DNC servers, say, we have no proof that any data was exfiltrated, which means it was carried over, over an internet connection. No, we can't prove that there was a hack, like under oath. It took 2 years for us to get this information out. We only got it out because I think it was Rich Grinnell leaked it, of all freaking people. But we knew. And for people to still harp on or look at or listen to anything remotely related to Russiagate at this point, that is a choice to live in ignorance. It has been debunked over and over and over again. The only thing that you're getting out of Russiagate right now is a dopamine hit, because you have convinced yourself that Vladimir Putin is somehow pulling the strings of government, but can't make the connection that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer keep giving Donald Trump everything he wants.
He's hacking our minds, don't you know?
It's
That
Rasputin.
came out. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
In the Washington Post?
We saw it.
The perception
Rasputin.
hacking?
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. And you just pointed out, too, less than 6 months ago, they pointed out, and Adam Schiff knew this for years, that CrowdStrike had no empirical evidence that
Zero.
any hacking came from Russia.
Zero.
No empirical evidence. So yesterday was even going further down the rabbit hole and say, all right, where did this come from? And we find out it was the warmongering queen herself with her little goons and Robbie Mook who put this out there. And the fact that they were going through all this stuff, I think the AOC shit today with going after Tulsi Gabbard was all about distracting us from who started Russiagate and who should be going to prison.
And distracting us from Assange, right?
No, all of it.
All of it, yeah.
No, it's a fantastic point. It is.
Yeah,
Although
I
I
wonder
want
how many-
the Russiagate thing came out and shattered right after the election. Who started Russiagate and how it came about. So that's been out. That's also been out for a number of years.
Yeah. Go ahead, Misty.
Yeah, I just wonder how many times do they get to lie to you before your sense of skepticism kicks in?
Yeah.
Like, how many times do they get to do this before you're like, maybe I should second guess what I'm being told here? It's incredibly frustrating. And I understand that the propaganda game in this country is extremely effective.
Right.
They're very good at what they do, but it just seems like there's so many instances of them just straight up lying to you. There's weapons of mass destruction. There's the Gulf of Tonkin. It just goes on. And it's how many times do they get to do it before you start thinking for yourself and stop just taking what Rachel Maddow tells you in and then making that your own personal opinion. It's mind-boggling to me that grown-ass adults behave this way.
It's just interesting because the only Democrat discussing and attacking the military-industrial complex, attacking the security state, and talking about election integrity, which is an issue none of the establishment will touch. It's really kind of interesting how now all the attention, instead of being focused on those very important subject matters, is now focused on her and how bad she is. This isn't about Tulsi Gabbard for me. This is about the policies. And a lot of these people point to really caring about policy. They do not give a damn about policy, obviously, because the only person putting out policy to protect us and to protect elections, to protect press freedoms, to protect people like Julian Assange is being now attacked. And so now we end up talking about Tulsi Gabbard and Ilhan Omar and all of this instead of talking about what the situation at hand is. And it is for me, I agree with Pasta. I think this is all a distraction to distract away from the message of Julian Assange and what that means significantly in regarding the trial, what it means for the rule of law. Because if they can do that, if they can get us distracted, they can continue as they were before.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Andrew, you got anything to say about that?
I would just say that the squad is literally just the PR firm for war criminals. Like that's all they are. It's just public relations trying to connect with younger generations. I have a whole laundry list of like personal issues I have with people involved in that squad.
Andrew has grievances,
but I won't air them on the show. All I'll say is just
leak them.
I don't even have links. It's just stories, just sad long stories.
Yeah. Well, guys, you guys anything else to get out of here with us? We're almost at your 45-minute mark. Why don't you guys tell us where they can find you guys, get more information? Johnny, do you have any one hard question for the real squad, the true squad? That's right. Action for Assange over here.
The Assange squad. I just wanted for you guys to quickly comment. What was going on with journalists being attacked in London?
Oh yeah.
Because that's we were hearing about the police getting called on Taylor, etc.
So that whole day was crazy. The Saturday, at first at like 8 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, 5 o'clock in the morning here where you guys are, where I am. Kevin Gostola and Juan Passarelli hosted a panel of a number of journalists who had cloud video access to the hearing, were able to live tweet it, report on it, and that stream got messed with right when Kathy Vogan from Consortium News Live, their producer, was breaking down some really important stuff. Yeah. Then we went on at 10 with our Saturday vigil and we're just absolutely hammered. We couldn't even do the live stream. We were having so many difficulties. At that same moment, 50 cops in London swarmed an Assange protest. An elderly gentleman was arrested.
That had been going on every
for
day
weeks and
weeks.
No problems whatsoever. At a couple hours after that, Taylor's hotel called the cops on her because she was down in the lobby past COVID curfew. She was waiting to meet an interview subject so they could iron out the details for when they were going to do the interview. She needed to be down there. Richard Medhurst was chased off in front of Belmarsh. He was trying to film in front of there. He got hemmed up and ran off. It seems like after a month of the empire being exposed for the craven, corrupt, broken, syphilitic, debilitated monster that it actually is, in open court throughout this hearing, as soon as that wrapped and people were starting to take notice of it, everything got clamped down on.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, journalism is under attack, via this trial, right? And this is something that I always point to. The police state, they're attacking people, they're attacking journalists here as well, but they're also attacking the overarching fourth estate that has become a parrot propaganda machine for the establishment. It's really funny. These people don't think that the MSNBC and even some of these TYT folks, they think that they're immune from this, but the reality is eventually it catches up to every single person. So thank you guys for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you, man.
Thank you
we
for
love
having
you
us.
guys. It's always fantastic to be on. You had a great talk with Pasta on Sunday. He was on my show with Alex from Red Star Radio. Fee, we've got to get you on Slow News Day here soon. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, I heard you have a new some special thing coming next Saturday, huh?
I do. I'm going to be announcing a new co-host on Slow News Day, and I'm very, very pleased about that.
Awesome.
And yeah, and I may actually do it on Saturday's vigil just so my co-host can have like a day to promote as well.
And that's Slow News Day, right? Tell people about Slow News Day. We'll go through everybody, tell them a little bit about everything before we get you out of here. Tell us about Slow News Day.
So I have conversations on Slow News Day that don't take place anywhere else on the entire goddamn internet. And as much as Action for Assange is a post-partisan organization, Slow News Day is very similar in that we're not here to talk about your pet Congress critter. We're going to talk about things that actually fucking matter, the national security state, the way that our empire is expanding, what gets wrought as a result of that. I've had Vanessa Beeley on a number of times, who's been embedded in Syria for years and years. Whitney Webb is a regular on my show. She's coming back very soon.
Jared Beck,
exemplary. Jared Beck has been on a number of times, and is always entertaining. That guy.
So is his wife.
She scares me. She does.
You know,
Elizabeth Beck scares me.
You know who gets
people get one day where it's just like all Elizabeths. I'm gonna have Elizabeth Beck, and I'm gonna have Elizabeth Voss, and I'm gonna have Elizabeth Mueller, and if we can, if I can't get Elizabeth Warren, I'll get her 28-year-old lookalike, Paula Jean Swears.
There you go. You know, some people get scared by your Twitter, Misty. Why don't you tell us people where they can find you on Twitter, and then we'll hand it over to Andrew to talk about Action for Assange to get you out. Go ahead, Misty.
Don't be scared of my Twitter. Just don't be a punk. I mean,
I love
your
Twitter.
You to speak on Assange, then speak on Assange. It's not that complicated. Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. If you want to join me in helping, like, try to hit up, AOC. And listen, I'm not expecting that they're going to respond. That's really not what me contacting them is about. It's more about exposing them and exposing them, and also exposing the people who follow them to the Assange case. So if somebody sees that in one of their threads or something and they decide to look into it further, that's a win for me. I don't expect them to respond, but it's, about something bigger than that. So yeah, I'm on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I also have a new show with my friend Jesse called Facts on the Ground. Nice. We are trying to do something kind of similar to what Steve does, kind of. We're trying to focus on issues that don't get a lot of coverage. We have a series on missing and murdered Indigenous women. Wow. We spoke to Dan Cohen about the annexation in Israel-Palestine. We're trying to do a lot of talk about a lot of the things that are getting missed in independent media that we talked about earlier. We don't do horse race conversations. We want to talk about stuff that actually matters. So, that's just kind of the way that we're sort of trying to combat the lackadaisical potency of independent media, I guess. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was fun.
Put your stuff in the chat. Your links in the chat.
If you can.
Yeah.
If you
okay.
Yeah.
Andrew, what can we expect out of Action for Assange coming up, and where can we find you, and where can we help out the cause and the movement of Free Assange?
You can expect a late start to tonight's vigil.
Yes. You can find us on YouTube at Action4Assange. You can find all of it on Twitter at Action_4Assange. But if you go to Action4Assange.com, we do put up call to actions constantly. Right now, we're doing a solidarity action with an Australian whistleblower to try to get every single member of the Australian Parliament contacted on his behalf. And then we also just put up a call to action for getting congressional representatives and senators, as well as city councils, to support the recent bills and demand co-sponsorship from their representatives. So we actually have a tool that we use called Contacting Congress that gives you the phone numbers of every single congressional office that a candidate has. So you can reach out and ask them, hey, co-sponsor this bill, but then also asking people to send it to their city councils as well.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming on. We love you. We'll have you on again, of course.